Welcome to Uncle's Channel, thanks for watching today, and let's continue our series where we talk about the Mega Man games on the Game Boy, and today we're talking about Mega Man 2. And there's no subtitle to Mega Man 2 like there was the first game, it's just called Mega Man 2. And I want to start this one off by looking at the box art. As we look at the box art, there's a few things of note here. First off, you got Mega Man riding on Rush Jet, pretty ordinary. You got Dr. Wily's little spaceship in the background, which you do fight in the game, so pretty ordinary. And then you have Quick Man off to the side. Now Quick Man is an NES version of Mega Man 2, but he's not in the Game Boy version of Mega Man 2. So it's like, why did they put him on the cover? Did they not research it at all to see that he's not in the game before putting him on there? I don't know, it's just of note. Now when you load the game up, there are 4 robot bosses to choose from, and that's exactly how it was in Mega Man 1 on the Game Boy. And if you just simply go in order on the top left to right and the bottom left to right, that's actually the recommended order to fight these bosses in. So it's just sort of weird they actually sort of gave away the bosses order. I guess they just want to make it a little bit easier for players. I don't know, but let's go ahead and start off with Crash Man. Now Crash Man, I'll openly admit, I didn't really like Crash Man stage on the NES, and I like it even less here on the Game Boy. And it really boils down to the parts where you're on this little platform going through this little maze, and these little gear things come off from the side, and they hit you and they knock you off, and you fall down not one, not two, usually all the way back down to the very beginning of the little shaft here, and you have to work your way all the way back up to the top. The little gears are never lined up with your Mega Buster to actually hit them, and they almost always hit you and knock you off. And I always found it incredibly annoying on the NES game, and I find it more annoying on the Game Boy game because health is so much hard to come by in the Game Boy game, at least in these first few levels it seems. So you finally make it to the end of this little section here, and then you have almost no health left, you can't find any health, and you get hit and you die and you have to start all over. It's incredibly annoying. And speaking of how rare the health is to pick up in this level, it's like the game knew that they almost never give you health pellets, so they actually hide them in different places throughout the level that are almost certain traps if you try to go get it. Like this one here, it's the smallest health pellet possible, but if you go and get it, you're guaranteed to get hit. So it's like the game is setting you up for a trap because they know that you need it so desperately, and it's sort of trolling you to a degree. But to possibly make up for the lack of health that they give you, they actually make the levels a good bit shorter than they were in the first Game Boy game, and so possibly that was to even it out or balance it a little bit. Now when you finally do get to Crash Man, he's probably one of the best bosses in the entire game here, because if you actually learn his strategies, he's a really fun to go through. Like you have to learn when to shoot, to make him jump, and when you jump, he jumps, and when to slide, because in this game you actually do have the little dash or the little slide move to use with Mega Man. And so this is one of the best bosses in the entire game, and I don't remember him being quite so good or quite so solid in the NES game. So Crash Man, level, not really a big fan of. Boss, excellent boss. Next up is the Metal Man stage, and this stage was once again really similar to the NES game as far as like the layout goes, and all the enemies are the same. And the really only difference here that I can notice is the health is once again extraordinarily rare and hard to come by. Take for example the little section here where the drills are coming down. In the NES game, this was like the perfect section to just go through and just constantly just spam killing the drills, and you can just have a feast on health to fill up. Here in this game, I bet I stood there for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just shooting the drills, and it dropped a single health pellet for me to pick up. And not only that, it was the smallest one to pick up, and before I could even get down there, it disappeared. And so it just goes to show, for some reason, in some of these levels, health is extraordinarily rare, and I just don't know why they did it in this game. But overall, I like this level a lot in the NES game, and I like it a lot in this game as well. I like the enemies as they come down. I've always enjoyed the little fellas as they come down, and they sort of like the clowns almost. They're doing a little rolly ball on top of the gears. I don't know, I've always found it pretty charming. And when you finally get to Metal Man, he's actually a pretty challenging boss once again. Follows the exact same patterns as the NES, but I'd actually say it's a little bit less hard than Crash Man because you actually get to use Crash Man's weapon against him. And next up is probably my favorite stage in the entire game, and it was my favorite stage in the NES game as well, and that's Woodman stage. Now, when you start the stage off, it's got the best background as far as like graphics wise. It also retains a lot of the same enemies. It's got the little rabbit here, phenomenal looking, got the little bats, phenomenal looking. I mean, it's a great looking stage, but then you get to the wolf, and holy cow, they completely redesigned the wolf. I guess it was too complex for the Game Boy, but what they created here, I mean, it's actually more terrifying to me. It's just a very scrawny, almost nightmarish wolf, and I actually like what they created a lot. It's different, but it's actually equally good in its own way. It was also weird in the Woodman stage because there's like an underwater section, and I don't remember that in the original Woodman stage. It also had needles coming down, which are from the Needleman stage. So it's like the Woodman stage was revamped a little bit, and I don't really understand the reasoning behind that. But as you get toward the end of the stage, of course, the chickens are back, and it's also at this point I noticed a small glitch in the game that's actually going to be very beneficial as you're playing it. Now, normally when you get hit in the game, of course, you're invincible for a second, but you also get knocked backwards, which slows down your progress. But I noticed as I was coming up on the chicken, if I slide as I'm getting damaged, I actually just continue to slide. I'll take the damage, but I don't actually have to go backwards in these frames or any steps. I just get to keep the progress or keep moving forward, which is actually really helpful in this game. but it seems like a glitch. I don't know if it was an NES game or not, but it's actually extraordinarily helpful. And then when you get to Woodman, he is by far the easiest boss in this entire game. You can simply sit there and shoot at him, and you can actually shoot through his shield as opposed to the NES game. And not every hit goes through the shield, but about 1 in every 2 shots goes through the shield, and you actually hit him. And it's super easy to dodge the leaves that are coming down because there are fewer leaves in the NES game. And you'll have him defeated with your Mega Buster. You don't even need to use a special weapon to get through it. Super easy boss. And the last of the first 4 stages is going to be Airman stage, and once again, follows the NES formula to a T. You have all the same enemies. You have these awesome giant floating heads from the NES games, little drills coming out the top, which I always just found so magical as a kid. You have the same little blower man tries to blow you off the edge. You have the same little lightning guys in the cloud. I mean, they really stuck to this stage probably better than just about any of them. And once again, you do have the little cloud parts that are sort of confusing, of like, where do you fall off the edge? You know, I didn't know I was supposed to fall in the little hole here. That's where I was supposed to fall. And the next part, there's a little hole there. I try to fall into it, and it's a death hole. Like, how was I supposed to know that? And then you finally get to Airman himself, and once again, he's just as easy as Woodman was. You simply stand there, shoot at him, jump over a couple of the tornadoes. Not even all of them. You get hit by almost all of them, if not all of them, and still defeat him by pretty much standing in one spot, just shooting your regular Mega Buster weapon. Super easy boss. And then we get this awesome picture here of Dr. Wily's base, or at least base number 1, and you get this really cool cutscene of Dr. Wily doing the moonwalk across the screen. He's trying to trick you to follow him over here so you can drop down the hole, but still, he's doing the moonwalk. And then you have 4 more robot stages you get to choose from, and these 4 robots are all going to be from Mega Man Part 3. They're not from Mega Man 2, and as opposed to the first Game Boy game where you just simply fought the bosses, and this one you actually get to go through a full-fledged level for these 4 bosses. And I started off with the Needleman stage, and this is once again pretty similar to NES, but they seem to mix it up a little bit more than they did the Mega Man 2 bosses from the first half of the game. And they also seem to mix the music up. Like, the music in this level was phenomenal, and I never remember thinking to myself the Mega Man 3 music for Needleman stage was really anything special, but here, man, a great song. But it's really cool to see so many of the Mega Man 3 enemies sort of make an appearance, like the Slingshot guys back in this stage. Obviously the Needleman enemies are back in this stage. It's just a really great stage overall. And when you get to Needleman himself, it's actually a little bit disappointing of a boss fight. I'm not sure if it was once again a glitch on my game, but he sort of got stuck on the left wall and he just kept jumping against the wall and he didn't move at all. And I just stood there and demolished him. Super easy boss fight yet again. This game is very similar to Mega Man 1 on the Game Boy, as in the boss fights are extraordinarily easy, with the exception of Crash Man, which was just a great fight. Next up was Magnet Man, and once again, pretty similar stage as the NES, shortened a little bit in some areas, and also some weird use of disappearing platforms. Like this one here, like, why they even include this disappearing platform in this spot? It's just one platform, and it serves no purpose. I don't know. But the disappearing platforms in this stage are actually so much easier than they were in the NES game, because it's not like a full block like it was in the NES game. It's just one little line. And you can actually jump through the platforms, which makes moving from one to the other so much easier in the tight situation. So, I mean, platforms, I'm actually a big fan of how they did them in this game. That was until I got to this one instance right here where actually if you fall on the spikes when you get hit, it actually kills you instead of being invincible for a second, which I thought was sort of crappy, because that's not how any Mega Man game has ever worked. And so the disappearing platforms and the balls coming down on you and instant death below you, regardless of being hit or not, I got a little annoyed with this one spot with the disappearing platforms. But other than that, great use of disappearing platforms for the game. When you get to Magnet Man himself, just like an NES, super easy boss, and is continuing the trend of easy bosses, medium levels. Then we arrive at Hard Man stage, and once again, I'm not sure if it's the same music as it was in the NES, I don't really recall it, but the music on the Game Boy here, another great song from the soundtrack. It's just weird how like certain songs are way better than other songs on this soundtrack, but just give it a little bit of listen here as well. Great soundtrack, but the level itself is actually very true to the NES game as well. You have the bees from the NES game, and I'll acknowledge these bees were a nightmare as a kid, and I still find them difficult to deal with, especially on the NES game. They weren't as difficult on the Game Boy, which made them a little more, I guess, cute, because you can just enjoy the scenery and not worry about being stung to death. And they also had the little traps to come up and try to bite you, which always remind me of like something out of Ghostbusters, so I'm glad to see they actually continued it in this game as well. But it was also in this level I noticed another glitch in the game, that when you're climbing, if you get hit while you're climbing, you continue to climb and you just take damage and you don't actually fall off the ladder like you do in every other Mega Man game. This made so many circumstances so much easier because you didn't have to worry about if you get hit that you're going to fall off. You just continue climbing up the ladder and you go through so many areas so much faster if you have the health to actually get to the end. A great glitch to come across, just as great as the sliding one we figured out earlier. Once again, Hardman, very similar to NES game, use the magnets you just got and you'll have no problems with them at all. And in the next stage, the Grasshopper Vacuum Cleaners are back again for Top Man Stage, and I always love these enemies in Top Man Stage, but I didn't love them as much as I did the cat. And the cat is of course back as well. The cat doesn't shoot out fleas like he did in the last game, but boy is he terrifying looking. He's not as bulbous as he was in the last game, or pompous here, but he is still a very threatening presence here as the cat in the game. And I enjoyed that they kept him in the Game Boy game for us. Top Man himself was actually way slower than he was in the NES game, and was a very easy boss to go through. Once again, all the bosses are just super easy compared to the NES version. And then you get a bonus boss, which this boss doesn't make any sense. You don't know his name. I'm going to call him Dig Man because he just sort of jumps over here and tries to dig a hole. He doesn't actually dig a hole. He just sort of tries to dig a hole. And he's super easy to avoid. You just sort of shoot the top of his head here. And I guess it's a boss because you get his weapon power afterwards. I never used his weapon, but you get his weapon power afterwards. And just a very confusing part of the game. I'm not really sure what they were trying to go for here. And then you get to the final stage here, which is Dr. Wily's main boss stage. And as you're going through it, it's sort of like a mix of all the stages. It's a good combination of all the stages from Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, and just an overall good boss stage for Dr. Wily. And then when you finally get to fight Dr. Wily, he has this little robot suit, and it's such a scrawny little suit again. I guess maybe the same people that did the Wolf from Woodman stage also worked on the Dr. Wily's suit here, because he's so scrawny, so threatening. Once again, just a weird little design they made for him. Stage 1 and Stage 2 are actually probably some of the more difficult fights in the game, but luckily I saved up most of my E-tanks, and pretty easy to collect them throughout the game and to use them in this battle, and you'll have no trouble with Stage 1 and Stage 2. And Stage 3, like, what a joke here. Like, he shoots this super slow missile at you that you can either slide under or jump over, and then he shoots these little tops out at you, and they just sort of float down. Super easy to avoid those as well, and you just simply shoot the skull, which is a weird little spot here, because like sometimes when you shoot it, nothing happens, but other times when you shoot it, he takes damage, and it's not like it's positioned differently. I have no idea like when it does and doesn't take damage. It's a weird little final boss. Super easy, but really weird. I'm not sure if there's a different technique I was supposed to use, but you can just use the Mega Buster and you can have it defeated pretty easily, pretty quickly. When you defeat Dr. Wily, he does try to escape in his little spaceship, and he crashes into a planet, and he creates a little mushroom cloud that's supposed to be like a skull, like his base, which was a nice little touch. I liked that. And of course, when you have the credits roll after that, you get to see all the enemies, just like you did in the first game. And at the end, you just simply were looking across the stars here, and you didn't actually get a cool little walk down the scenery or walk down the corridor. They actually sort of skimped a little bit on the cinematics for this game as an overall. They had some good screenshots, but most of the cinematics were much better in the first game. So of the first two games, which one's the better one? If you're looking for one that's very closely aligned to the NES, I'd say this one. If you're looking for an individual challenge, I would say the first one. If you're looking for more of a challenging levels and you want a real hard Mega Man course to go through, I'd say the first one. If you want an easier game, go for the second one. Which one did I personally enjoy playing through? I'd actually say I probably enjoyed playing through this one a little bit more, just because I enjoyed seeing the differences in this version versus the NES, and I enjoyed the mix-up they did for the Mega Man 3 stages for the second core 4 bosses that you go through. Overall, though, both the games have their pluses and their minuses. I'm really excited to see what they do with Mega Man 3. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's the best one in the series. But there are 5 we're going to go through. These are the first 2. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above. As always, go out there, find a great game to play. Just simply have a great rest of the day.